Greetings and welcome to a special edition of the People's Health Briefing. I'm Dr. Naha Abalada reporting on April 16th to give you up-to-date information on the Johnson & Johnson vaccination pause. Please submit your questions in the comments by direct message or by email to admin@rootsclinic.org. Undoubtedly, everyone has heard about the recent recommendation of the CDC and the FDA to temporarily pause use of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. This is due to an extremely rare complication, which is a specific type of clot in the brain, cerebral venous sinus thrombosis, or CVST, that occurred in combination with low levels of blood platelets in 6 individuals. And that is what caused the CDC and the FDA to issue this health alert. And this is unusual because here we have a clot at the same time that you have someone prone to bleeding. And so that is a strange combination that we don't typically see, except in some very specific situations. So we are trying to understand why this is happening in this situation. And so before I go into more detail on that, I wanted to take a little step back and remind us that there are 2 vaccines that are currently available that use the adenovirus vector. And the first is the AstraZeneca vaccine, which is a 2-dose vaccine approved in Europe. It's currently awaiting emergency use authorizations in the United States. And you may recall that there were some concerns for rare clotting events in the UK and in Europe with the AstraZeneca vaccine. And then we have the Johnson & Johnson, which is the 1 dose, and the emergency use authorization was granted in the United States on February 27th, and it began being distributed here on March 2nd. It was actually also authorized in Europe, but it hasn't yet been delivered or administered there. So we don't yet have details on what all is going on, but there have been some similarities in some of the clinical presentations between what we are seeing with the AstraZeneca and with the Johnson & Johnson. So one of the things we are trying to figure out is if there's a relationship, what that is and what it might mean. So what we are seeing with the Johnson & Johnson is this cerebral venous sinus thrombosis, or CVST. The cerebral sinuses are basically blood channels that drain blood from the brain. And a thrombosis is a clot. So CVST is a clot in the vessels that drain blood from the brain. And CVST is not a new thing. We know about it. We've seen it before. We know that it's more common among younger people, age 20 to 50. We know it's more common in women. But what is unusual in these cases is that it is occurring at the same time as a low platelet count, or thrombocytopenia. And platelets are blood cells that help your blood to clot. So when they go very low, you are at risk of hemorrhaging or bleeding and not being able to form a clot. So at the same time you have a clot in the brain, you also have a condition that keeps you from clotting. And this is something that is making us draw the comparison between the Johnson & Johnson and the AstraZeneca vaccine, because with the AstraZeneca vaccine, they have seen something similar. And this is a recent article from the New England Journal of Medicine. And this is a complicated title here: thrombotic thrombocytopenia. So very similarly, we are seeing a thrombosis, which is a clot, in the setting of thrombocytopenia, which is again the low platelet count. And this is something that is unusual. It is rare. It was rare with the AstraZeneca. It's extremely rare with the Johnson & Johnson from what we know so far. And so we've seen it. It's infrequent. But again, the AstraZeneca and the Johnson & Johnson are both adenoviral vector vaccines. So they're using that same technology. And the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices has been reviewing the J&J data in a lot of detail. Through April 12th, they have discovered 6 case reports of this CVST occurring with the low platelet count. So what the ACIP, the ACIP, is looking at are these 6 cases here. And keep in mind that these are case reports. So this is very different from the clinical trials where we understand the total number of people in each group, who is in the vaccine group, who's in the placebo group. We know who had what risk factors and so on. And so, as you can see here, there were in fact two cases of CVST during the clinical trial, and one was in the vaccine group and one was in the placebo group. They both had some predisposing factors to getting clots, and with essentially no difference here between the vaccine group and the control group. And with this being a low incidence, this was not considered significant in the clinical trials. Now that we are after the trials, this is when you find that 1 in a million, so to speak. And that appears to indeed be about what we're looking at, a little less than 1 in a million, actually. But we will learn more in the days and weeks to come. So, this is the information that the ACIP reviewed in their meeting on Wednesday. And this is showing 6 cases of CVST with a low platelet count, which is also causing hemorrhage. And this slide is showing their symptoms. And the main initial symptom that these individuals were experiencing was headache, also some vomiting, chills, fever, and then some later symptoms that are kind of all over the map. And I'll show you why this is important in a moment. But this included one-sided weakness, some difficulty with speaking, a severe abdominal pain, and bruising, leg swelling. And so here you can see that on this top row that all 6 of these individuals had this clot in the brain. But a few of them, you can see on the lower right there, had clots in other areas of the body. And I wanted to show this because this is forming the basis of some of our current guidance about what to be looking for. And so, what else do we know about these 6 individuals? Now, remember, these are case reports, but this is what we have to go on. These are unusual presentations, they're extremely rare. We have over 6.8 million doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine administered at the time that these 6 cases were identified. So it's extremely small number, and I wish I could say that we had a more robust set of data to share, but at this time this is what we do know, and it's important. All 6 of these individuals are white, non-Hispanic women, all between the ages of 18 to 48. So all are white women of childbearing age. We don't know yet whether there's a correlation with hormones. It looks like only one of the 6 of these women was actually taking hormones, but certainly we are wondering and concerned if there is some correlation here with these being women of childbearing age. So, with such a small number of cases, why did the CDC and FDA do such a complete full stop on administering Johnson & Johnson vaccination? And I think the biggest thing, the most compelling thing was to get all of our attention. And when I say all of our attention, I mean all of our attention, doctors, people in healthcare, and also just the general population, people who received the vaccine. This was a major red flag alert to let us know if you see these clots, we need to be asking about vaccination history. And because what's happening is that the normal treatment for a clot of this nature could actually cause harm. And so heparin, which could be considered a first-line treatment, could be dangerous in the setting of these low platelet counts. And so basically, this was just a huge flag for every physician and medical provider in particular who may be treating patients or who patients may be calling, that we need to be suspicious that this could be happening. And so this is very critical because we know from our experience that it does take some time for new clinical information to make its way around to hospitals and emergency rooms and the doctor's offices and the clinics. But this move got everyone's attention. I don't think there's anybody who has not heard this news. So this was the move to make to raise everyone's awareness, to raise everyone's suspicion, and to ensure that we're not only recognizing this, but we're appropriately treating it. and that we're not causing harm with our treatment, which otherwise could have very likely happened without this warning. And then also that we're reporting it, because that's actually how this was recognized in the first place, was through VAERS, or the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, which is the system that all of us are required to report into if there are any adverse events from vaccines. So there are many people who are saying, why did they do all of this after only 6 cases? Well, this is part of the reason why. We're also in the fortunate situation here that we have 2 other vaccines that are aiding in the fight against this deadly pandemic, which I think we all know are different technology. They are the mRNA as opposed to the adenoviral vector vaccines. And these are the main vaccines that have been used in the United States thus far. The vast majority of vaccines administered in the US are the Moderna and Pfizer, because the authorizations for those came much earlier, and the safety profile on those continues to look excellent. Now, the other key reason to want to pause the J&J vaccine is that those individuals who received the vaccine in the past 3 or 4 weeks, we want to be on alert. Now, all of the 6 cases happened between 6 to 13 days after they received the J&J vaccine. When we look at the AstraZeneca information, some of the different kinds of clots that happened with that vaccine occurred a little sooner than the 6 days, and some a little later than the 13 days. So I think if we can just say that if you get any of the potential warning signs within 3 to 4 weeks of getting the J&J vaccine, we want you to seek medical attention right away. And remember, from what we know, this is all very rare, but still, we want you to be on alert. So, with the CVST, the cerebral venous sinus thrombosis clot, again, this is a clot in the vessels that drain blood from the brain. And so, the way it will show up is it could be like a stroke. It could be a very severe headache and this is not just a regular headache. This is not like the headache that you might get just from getting the vaccine itself. This is a headache that does not go away, does not get better. It's typically going to be more severe, maybe accompanied with nausea and vomiting, with visual disturbance, maybe stroke-like symptoms like weakness on one side or difficulty speaking, could even present with seizures. And so those are warning signs that should take you to the emergency department. Some other things we want to be on alert for, because remember, I mentioned there were other clots in other parts of the body, not just the brain. And so those could be, for example, in the abdomen, could cause severe abdominal or back pain. A clot to the lungs could cause shortness of breath or chest pain. A clot in the leg could cause leg pain, leg swelling. And then, and these are not going to be like your normal back pain or a normal stomach ache. These are going to be severe and not improving. Then there's a matter of the low platelet count. And so, again, this was unusual in that it presented together with the clot. And this was seen with both adenoviral vector vaccines. So again, all of this is rare, but also just unusual. So this is the part why we'd want you to be on alert. So the way that the low platelet count could show up is tiny red spots on the skin or unusual bruising. And so I'm going to run through all these symptoms one more time, because I realize they're symptoms of slightly different things. But again, we were kind of casting this big net and wanting to just be on alert for something that to some extent appears at this point like a needle in the haystack, but that's what we're wanting to find and learn more about. So those potential warning signs: a severe headache, maybe accompanied by nausea and vomiting, visual disturbance, weakness on one side, so stroke-like symptoms, seizures, severe abdominal or back pain, shortness of breath or chest pain, leg pain or swelling, and or tiny red spots on the skin or unusual bruising. So if you've gotten the Johnson & Johnson in the last 3 or 4 weeks and any of these things occur, please seek medical attention. And please advise the hospital or your medical provider that you recently received the Johnson & Johnson, and present your vaccination card if possible. Like I said, I don't think there's a medical provider in this country or maybe in the world for that matter, that doesn't know about this, but you'll just want to make sure that they know about this. So it's important that the physician knows that you received the vaccine and the date you received the vaccine so that they can provide the unique treatment that may be required in the situation, and also that they will do the proper reporting through VAERS. Now, from everything we know, this is all very unlikely to occur, but this is what we want you to be on the lookout for. What we do know is that if you have gotten the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, you are protected from COVID-19. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine is extremely effective at preventing you from getting COVID-19, from being hospitalized or dying from COVID-19, and that fact remains. That remains unchanged. So if you or someone you know received the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, we have every reason to believe that you are well protected from COVID. Your risk of an adverse event is extremely low. But again, we're just going to be extra vigilant and extra careful and do everything that we can under these circumstances. So, what's next? Right now, we are waiting for the experts to complete their review, and then they have some decisions to make and possible things that could happen. They could do anything from, on one extreme, just completely stopping the J&J. This does not seem very likely given the overall safety profile and the effectiveness of the vaccine, but this remains to be seen. They, on the other extreme, could just completely resume it, just unpause it altogether, just say, we know what we're looking for now. It's incredibly rare, but if we see it, we know how to treat it. Or there could be something in between. Maybe they will limit it to certain groups or say we can't use it in certain groups, maybe by age or gender. Or maybe they will discover more of a underlying common theme among these six people and realize that that is maybe a contraindication or a reason why we cannot give the vaccine to certain people. So we don't know yet. It's too soon to say. There are a lot of experts reviewing a lot of information and data. And of course, now that we all have a high index of suspicion, we're on high alert. If there's more to discover, we are now in the best position to do just that and discover it and sort it all out. And in the meantime, we're still in the thick of this deadly pandemic. We're still in a race. We're seeing some upticks here in Alameda County and statewide, and we are really needing to get this thing under control before new variants take hold and have us dealing with a whole new situation. So, what that tells me is that the monitoring bodies are very serious about safety because they made this call to pause the Johnson & Johnson vaccine really at the risk of the entire nation's vaccination campaign at this very critical moment. And they did so full well knowing all of that. And so they've acted very decisively. They'll be criticized no matter what. They did too much, they didn't do enough. But for me, as a physician, I am appreciative of the fact that we now all have a heightened awareness. We all know what to look for. We have information to help us stay vigilant. So I know we are all tired of all of this, but it really is imperative that we hang in there and continue to do what we need to do to bring this pandemic under control and put it behind us. We're not there yet. And even though we are progressing well with vaccination efforts, we are just not there yet. So please continue with all of the layers of protection we know: mask, distance, vaccine, avoid crowded, poorly ventilated spaces, keep up your good nutrition, take a multivitamin and some vitamin D, and manage your stress. This concludes today's People's Health Briefing. Please have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for joining us, and please tune in next Tuesday at 10 a.m. See you then.